all week, we were expecting a bombshell report coming from the New York Times. Reporters, one of which I'm good friends with, who was covering this story, Leslie Kane, broke this story wide open about UFO crashed wreckage that is being held and examined by the United States government. And we now have confirmation of that from a number of sources. This is a front page story in the New York Times today. And despite Pentagon statements that it disbanded their covert program to investigate unidentified flying objects, it's still happening. It was renamed, and it was tucked away inside of what was called the Office of Naval Intelligence. So they're continuing to study it, despite saying that it was removed. Now, Pentagon officials are not talking about the program, but parts of it the classified details have come out. It did appear in a Senate committee report last month, and specifically had to do with these UFOs that were tracked over Southern California off the USS Nimitz. Unbelievable, where these pilots captured this Tic-Tac craft, and the Navy did confirm that these UFOs were real.
Tic-Tac.
But we now have information from senators and members of the military that in fact, look how fast it's flying, they just can't believe it. And there it is. We now have confirmation from multiple senators, including former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, who's seen the information, and he said, after looking at this, I came to the conclusion that there were reports, some were substantive, some not so substantive, that were actual materials that the government and the private sector had in their possession. These are otherworldly UFO possessions that have been tracked by the U.S. government, and now have confirmation that they exist and that we have been studying these, doing laboratory studies as well. Astrophysicists have been looking at this, and they've been working on this program for years. So we still don't have full details exactly what's in this material, but they've said these vehicles are from other worlds, not of this Earth, that they have been studying. I mean, is that not arguably the biggest story of all time? That the U.S. government is studying UFO wreckage from other planets. Come on. I don't think it gets any bigger than that. Unbelievable. Quoting the article, quoting this New York Times piece from this morning, off-world vehicles not made on this Earth. Off-world vehicles. That they have materials, that they have... So Mr. Davis, who now works at the Aerospace Corporation, a defense contractor, said that he gave a classified briefing to the Defense Department agency as recently as March about retrievals that they have had of UFOs from other worlds in the New York Times. It's a whole new world. When this sort of stuff, I remember growing up and watching local news reports, and there would be, over Arizona or over Philadelphia, and they'd always do this. They'd do their main news, which I couldn't stand. I always hated this. Even then I disliked this. They would do their main news block, right? The big stories of the day. They'd cover coronavirus. They'd cover whatever they were covering. House fire, whatever. Crash on Route 222, whatever. And then they'd get to the end of the news and they say, well, folks, it's not a bird or a plane up in the sky. That jokey news anchor, blah, blah, blah. Well, some folks over southern Pennsylvania say it wasn't a bird or a plane up there. It was something entirely different. And then they'd play X-Files music underneath it, and they'd say, here's video captured by whatever on her farm. She thinks this was an alien or a UFO. What do you think? And then they'd kind of chuckle and joke about it back at the news desk. And, okay, what's coming up in the weather tonight? How are we looking for the weekend for your barbecue? It was always done in a joking manner, and now I think we've gotten beyond that, where you have a number of high-ranking members of the military who are on the record now talking about this, front page of the New York Times, former senators, governors that I've interviewed on this subject, who've seen things that would make your hair stand on end. So I think we're finally turning the jokiness course on this. I'm glad about it, because this is a serious subject that I think deserves, especially for national security. When you have these UFOs, Senator Rubio is quoted in his piece saying, what concerns me is that these have been showing up over military bases. We know, of course, if you follow anything that happened in Montana, the famous military, the nuclear bases there, where a UFO was seen by multiple members of the military, hovered over, I think it was it Malmstrom? Malmstrom Base in Montana hovered over the nuclear facilities and shut all of the nuclear missiles offline. And they were all on separate computers, so they weren't interactive with each other. Hovered over, shut all of the nuclear weapons offline. Look it up. Leslie Kean has reported on that story, and it's a fascinating story as well. So we're going to try to get Leslie on the show. I would love to talk to her about her reporting on UFO wreckage and see what else we can learn from her. So there you go. Those are some of the big